This is Richard Enderby of Alfred Enderby Fish Smokers on Grimsby Docks. Can you tell me about smoking fish in your smokehouse, Richard?
Yes, ours is a 100-year-old traditional fish smoking factory, purpose-built, and it's a very specialist process. It's a cold smoking process, so we only do cod, haddock and salmon. We can't do any hot smoking. It's an overnight process, which is unusual these days. Normally fish is smoked quickly in kilns, but we believe that the overnight process gives a lot better, more intense flavour and aroma.
How long has this process been used?
It goes back to the beginning of Grimsby Fish Docks. It was used in the early days when there wasn't any freezing facilities. If you didn't sell the fish on the day, you smoked it overnight and then sold it the following day. But now it's done principally for its flavour. So
the smokehouses predate the ice factory, for instance?
Yes, I think the very earliest ones go back to about 1860 that are recorded, and most of them were built at the end of the 19th, early 20th century.
People must have been smoking fish before then, though.
Well, that's right, but not on this scale.
Right.
Yeah, this is a much bigger scale. I mean, Grimsby was the first fishing port to really fully industrialise and supply London direct. Yeah, so there was fish smoking going on in Scotland and in London, and there was a lot of migration into Grimsby from those two areas, and the best ideas from both ends of the country were sort of amalgamated in Grimsby, and that's why Grimsby had such an advantage. It sort of took the whole process forward into the modern age.
And how many smokehouses are there in Grimsby?
Now, there must be about half a dozen still operating. One has just recently set up again after being redundant for a few years. Probably the production of smoked fish has increased, traditionally smoked fish has increased since we got PGI status, because the supermarkets are now asking for it and as well demanding it.
Could you explain what PGI status is?
It means protected geographical indication. Basically, it's European protection which recognises. You want to start again when that?
No.
Yeah. I'll let it go now. Yeah, PGI means protected geographical indication, which is the European standard. It gives protection to the product, and it means that it demands a certain level of process, i.e. we must keep the fish in the smokehouses for a minimum of 12 hours, and also where we source our fish and how we pack it and that sort of thing. But it differentiates our product, which is a sort of specialist product, from the mass-produced kiln-smoked, which doesn't have the PGI status.
So is Grimsby now the only place where fish is produced in these 100-year-old chimneys?
It's the only place where cod and haddock is produced in any quantity. There are places that still do kippers at Whitby and Craster, but Grimsby is very much the centre for smoking of cod and haddock in the traditional way.
And there used to be smokehouses in Hull, I understand.
That's right, yes. Hull had almost as many as Grimsby, I think, at one time, but now there's none left there. I don't think they had as many small firms. Hull quickly sort of consolidated into a few large firms, and some of them burnt down as well, which is always a hazard if they weren't built properly in the first place.
So this building that we're in was built when, do you know?
We think about 100 years ago, just at the turn of the century, just after.
Right. So, and these smokehouses on Grimsby Docks, how do they fit in with the area that we call the Casbah?
Well, most of the traditional smokehouses are in the Casbah area, and some are being used and some aren't. But they are all listed, so they can't be knocked down. And it's a pity we can't find a use for the buildings and also the buildings adjacent to them, which are also often empty. I mean, the whole area is a historic designated area. And there are other listed buildings apart from the smokehouses themselves, so it is quite a cluster of listed buildings. And the smokehouses are seen as nationally important because there is no cluster of smokehouses anywhere else in Britain, or in Europe for that matter, of their type. And each one is unique, each one is subtly different, yeah, they need looking after.
Could you describe the process that the fish goes through?
Yes, we buy the fish off the fish market every morning. We bring it in here to be filleted. It is then brined, put in salt water for 10 minutes, and then it's hung on racks to drain. And at the end of the day, we put the fish in the smokehouses behind me, and it is left in the smokehouse overnight. Now, in each smokehouse that you see, there is a bag of sawdust put in every night, and that smoulders very, very slowly because it is a cold smoking process. So although you can see the smoke going up behind me, the fish is normally much higher than the smoke, and it's circulating with cold air. And that's why Grimsby, I think, has maintained the traditional process because of its position on the coast. The actual docks juts right out into the North Sea in the Humber, and you've always got these cold winds blowing. It's a dry, cold atmosphere that you need to smoke fish in a traditional way successfully, and I think Grimsby has an advantage in that. And we have other advantages as a port. We get the best fish into Grimsby for smoking, which is mainly Icelandic haddocks, and we've got an unequalled transport system to get it quickly to our customers.
There's quite a lot of skill, isn't there, in judging?
Yes, it's all done by hand and eye, and it takes a number of years to be proficient at it, because it alters almost on a daily basis. It alters hugely on a seasonal basis. What we do in the summertime is quite different from what we do in the winter. And even on a day-to-day basis, like yesterday was cool and damp, today is warm and dry. So we have to alter the smoking. As a result, we light the fires later, we put the fish higher up in the houses. We tamp the sawdust down to slow the smoking process. And we have to monitor the weather constantly.
How long have you worked in this business?
I've been here just 40 years. The business has been going for 53 years.
So, 1970s?
What, me?
Yes.
Yeah, 1974, yeah.
Yeah. So what did the docks, what did the Casbah and the ice factory look like in 1974 when you started?
Yeah, it was the point just before the Cod Wars, when the port was still functioning at its full extent. After the Cod Wars, a lot of the boats were tied up, and a lot of the buildings on the fish docks were actually built to service the trawling side of the industry. So you would get engineers, you'd get joiners, and other people to maintain the trawlers. So when the trawling fleet was tied up, those buildings became empty, and the people that was pillaging fish on the pontoon, basically in the open air, did occupy those buildings for a while. But now, with current regulations, they've moved on into more modern premises, which leaves a lot of the buildings around here empty. But at its height, in the 50s and 60s, this place was so busy. They called it a town within a town, because not only were they just people, there was a lot of ancillary industries and backup businesses. There were banks, there were shops, there were cafes, cooperages, making barrels constantly. You name it, it was going on down here. I mean, down this street itself, McClaw Street, that we're on, there were a dozen businesses doing different things. There was a butcher's, I remember, going with my father when I was a little boy to get the Sunday joint. I used to come down with him on a Saturday morning, and he used to pack the fish and I used to mess about. And then we used to get off down the road, get the Sunday joint to take home. So there was even a butcher's down here.
That's really weird, isn't it, to have a butcher's on the docks?
Yeah.
So, preserving fish by smoking it, as you say, it was, pre-refrigeration. So, you had no business with the ice factory whatsoever, although now you're the closest building to the ice factory.
Yes, I mean, there was always a need for ice, and in the early days they used to literally take the ice off ponds and store it like they used to do in the big country houses. But the demand for ice was massive, and with the advent of steam trawlers, which Grimsby had the first steam trawler in the world in 1881, it was the Zodiac. 10 years later there was a whole fleet of steam trawlers, and once you had steam trawlers, they were sailing beyond the North Sea. They were going to Faroe and Iceland and Norway, and those trips would have been impossible without a massive amount of ice, because it would take several days to get back, so you needed the ice to preserve the fish on the voyage home. And so it was the biggest of its type in the world, wasn't it, when they built it, and probably and it is a unique building.
I've seen a photograph that you took in the 70s of the inside. Did you go in there often?
No, I have been in, and obviously to take the photograph, and there was the overwhelming smell of ammonia from the way the freezers worked in those days. And I mean, the way they produce ice now is quite different. I mean, they used to produce ice in huge blocks, where now all ice tends to be made in sort of slithers of ice. I think they find that a lot easier to do. I mean, everybody was using ice. It wasn't just the trawlers; all the fish merchants used it to chill the fish on when they put it on there, because it all went by railway in those days. So. The fish was put on the railway wagons and sent around the country. Everybody was using ice except you? Yes. Except the smokers? Well, we use it occasionally if we're keeping fish overnight. If we have to, if we know there's no fish the next day and we buy extra fish in, we'll have to put ice on it. But generally speaking, smoked fish you don't ice, because it's dry and it would make it wet, so we just chill it down. So what do you think the future is for fish smoking and for Grimsby Docks? Well, there's a huge demand for the product that we do, and we've even got a new smokehouse opening up this week to cope with that demand. And it is recognised as a specialist product now by everybody, and it is unique to Grimsby. So there'll always be a demand for Grimsby traditionally smoked haddock, and there needs to be a modern environment in which to do it. I know this building's 100 years old, but to do it successfully, I think you need to just do the smoking in this building and try and do all the prep and whatever else needs to be done off-site, because people are demanding it. These days they demand a longer shelf life, so they like it vacuum packed or preserved or packaged in another way. So because this building is not particularly suitable for that sort of thing, we need to reutilise all the other buildings on the fish docks that are often adjacent to smokehouses that are empty and are infested often with vermin, and sort out the whole fish docks. Well, I say the whole fish docks. The historic area is a very small part of the whole fish dock area. The footprint of the Casbah is about the same footprint as the ice factory. And so if the council and ABP got together and sorted that out and allowed traditional fish smokers to use buildings, bring them up to a standard that traditional fish smokers could utilise these buildings for different sort of value-added parts of the process, and then we could go forward much faster and more successfully. And there is a huge potential for food tourism, which is a rapidly growing part of tourism. Grimsby is missing out on that because at the moment the docks is very intimidating for visitors. We do get visitors constantly, and fortunately, because we're near the entrance to the docks, they come to us, and we encourage them to get fish from elsewhere, because it's not just the fish smokers on the docks, there's other fish processors. You can get all types of fish on the docks, and so the docks needs to be a lot more welcoming, and I mean, it's partly the image of Grimsby. Grimsby is synonymous with with fish, and people come here expecting to be able to buy fish, which they can do, but often
it's curiously difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, but they're put off by the environment,
yeah.
and there needs to be more information, better signage, maps showing them where to go, because when they do get here, we're quite happy to deal with them and help them, and then they can go on to Cleethorpes and have some real fish and chips. Grimsby fish and chips, so you know, it's a nice day out for people, isn't it? And so I think we should encourage that a lot more as well.